I've used Cursor, I've used Continue, I've used DevClaude, Claude Dev, all of them, right? But I think I've nailed the workflow for now. Starting in Aider and then going to Cursor. Today we're building some features in my product. It's called Map. Without further ado, the feature that I want to work on first is I want my calendar list to mimic that of Google Calendar. So Google Calendar has this nice feature where you can open and close this My Calendars. You have check marks that associate with the color of the calendar. You can also do display this only. I really like that, but I want to make it so you can drag and drop to reposition them. And I also want it to be stateful. The current way that my SaaS works is that it has the ability to drag and drop, and it's saving that in local storage so that you can see the order of them. Do have the visibility, so most of the stuff for the functionality, whether it's a query, mutation, action, that already exists. All I'm going to focus on is actually the UI for this first one. So what I'm going to do is I'll open up Aider and I'm going to add all the relevant files. So all of those are now added to the chat. And again, you only want to use the things that are going to be relevant in here, or the quality of the results will go down. Now, next up, if you read the documentation from Aider, it's very clear that you should be using the architect and code pattern. Now, this is shown to produce much better results, and I won't lie, it definitely does. And also, if you read into some of the benchmarks that they have on their blog, you can see that it clearly is the best way of doing things. Now, I'm going to be using Sonnet 3.5 for both the architect as well as the coder, but you can, in your config, define a different one. So if I wanted to do that, I'd go into my conf and I would search up the architect. And I can see, do I want to have a different model for that? All of that is able to be changed in here. Now, back to the task at hand. I've added this in here, and now I'm going to do /architect, and I'm going to say plan, :space, and then I'll come up with my plan. So let me write that out. So here's my plan. And I'm very specific in some areas where I'm saying, you know, we want to do exactly this, and I put in the name of the file and backticks. I also mention the name of a different product because I assume that it knows about Google Calendar. I explain a lot about the feature, but then at the end, I actually leave the door open a little bit, where I say, can you build on this idea and come up with an intuitive way of completing the task? Now, when I fire this off, it's going to immediately start thinking about how it's going to do it. When you're in architect mode, it won't actually do the task on your behalf. It will just tee it up. This is your way of kind of double checking that what they're implying and what they're planning is going to be what you want. So I can see it's coming up with something, says, let's get these icons. Okay, great. It's going to update the calendar item component, which is in there. This looks fine to me. It looks like, you know, it's doing a good job. I'll just read through this. And it's important that you actually read through these. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to read through this. And then towards the bottom, you can see it gives you the breakdown of the plan, where this design is intuitive because it uses familiar checkboxes. The checkbox color matches the calendar color. This display only option is easily accessible. It doesn't clutter anything. Great. I think this looks good. It also tells me the cost of it. So for 5 cents, it did all of that. It planned it all out. I'm going to hit yes. And by doing that, this is telling it, okay, it's time to code. So behind the scenes, it's using a proxy that's a pretty cool project for basically Python to interact with any LLM. Now it's doing a search and replace on all of this. And I have my server running. So when this wraps up, we'll be able to test it. You can see it just did the find and replace on the first file, and now it's doing in the context. And now it says these changes implement the new design for the calendar menu component. And it kind of recaps everything, and it tells you, okay, well, this was completed for 21 cents for this whole session, and it applied the edit to this. Now, keep in mind, if you're doing this a lot, this is a crazy fact. For 20 cents, you did all of that. So, of course, you need to test it and see. You can see that I have a couple type issues, but nothing's really jumping out at me. And then I'll open up calendar context. So it got pretty close. It looks like it now has these checkboxes and now has display this only, which that works too. And I want to add a feature in that's dynamic to when I select the same one that is only being shown. So it'll say show all calendars. So otherwise I have to go through and click all of these, and I don't like that. And so I'm going to ask it to implement that. And I'm also going to ask it to put set as default as one of the menu items. So I've asked it to move set as default into the menu when a user clicks the three dots. We also want to make display this only option to be dynamic for when a user selects a calendar that is the only one visible. It should say show all calendars. So it'll come up with a new plan. And a few minutes later, you can see that we now have everything we asked for. Our accordion is here. I even have this nice framery animation because I asked for that. I said make it a little bit better. And all of it works as expected. So I can show display this only. It'll show me the work calendar. I can do show all calendars. It'll bring all of those back. What I do after I test the work is I'll actually do /git and then run whatever commands I want in there. Sometimes I do /ask and then I'll say create a conventional commit, and it'll generate a really good one for me that I just paste in to there, and I'll push that up. Working in really small chunks seems to be the best way to get stuff done with these. Next, we want to maintain the state. So when a user closes this, opens it, they toggle off some, we want to actually store that state using context and have it be the same, so when I refresh, those are all there. So this will involve a little bit more prompting, and it's simple. I'll go in and I've already cleared out the previous conversation because I want to have fresh context. I want to delete that window. You can do /reset to do that, and I'll go ahead and I'll add the files relevant to this. This time I'm actually going to see how creative, how thoughtful can this LLM be towards solving this problem for me. So instead of explicitly telling it all the details of implementation, I'm going to leave the door open and say what I want the outcome to be and see how it comes up with a plan. If I don't like the plan, I can ask it other questions like, why did you choose this? Or is this the best way of doing things? But be sure to include all relevant files so you're not repeating yourself. So I say, how would we make it so when a user refreshes, the calendars that are checked or unchecked, which determines visibility, along with the order of the calendars and the state of the accordion, if closed or not, are still the same after a refresh? We don't need to persist this to DB. So I can immediately see it's going to use local storage for this. And I want to double check that I don't have another file that includes local storage. It looks like I already have a use local storage file, so I'm going to go ahead and add that to context and reprompt. So I'll type in no, and I'm going to say add use local storage, and I'll just reprompt this. I'll say we have a file for use local storage. And this is kind of the magic, where it won't always one-shot the perfect plan because it doesn't have full context. And you don't want to give it the context of your entire project all at once because the quality will just degrade. So in this case, it's going to use that same one. It'll persist the visibility state of calendars using local storage, maintain the order using local storage, and remember the expanded and collapsed state using local storage. So let's say yes. It looks like this one gave it a little bit of trouble. So I have a couple errors where it made the updates in the menu, but it didn't make the updates in the context or vice versa. Instead of continuing to prompt in there, I'll just copy the relevant errors and put them in here and say fix. On Cursor, I'll do / and I'll reference the open editors. So I know that I have the menu and the context in here. And after a couple prompts, everything works. I can see that I can reorder these still. I can hit display this only and it'll show me just that. I can do show all calendars. It'll do just that. And I can close it, refresh, it stays closed. And if I go into local storage, you'll be able to see that I have my theme, of course, the accordion, the visible calendar IDs, and everything. Thanks for watching, everybody. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. If you like stuff like this, you can also sign up below, and you'll get even more tips and tricks. Until next time.